Hello everyone, I'm Cubus and welcome to Is It Patched. Today I've got for you a review of the newest installment in the Battlefield franchise, the Battlefield Hardline. Let's start with the design, shall we? The Battlefield Hardline is a spin-off from the main series of the Battlefield franchise. It has dropped all the military theme in favor of the cops and robbers one. So this time around you don't get to be a marine or some kind of soldier like this. This time you're a police officer working in the DEA department in, I believe it was Los Angeles, if I remember correctly. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. The story of the game in the single player mode. It starts pretty well. It seems like the first two levels were very well designed. It was there wasn't very much of the disconnection between the gameplay and the story. There is no ludonarrative dissonance. I mean, there can be, but thanks to the mechanics that developers have put into this game, it's minimized, because you can go in to the level and do it the Rambo style, shoot everything that moves and go ahead with this. But if you go into it like a cop would and don't shoot the people and do it, you know, a little clever, you can go around and sneak behind the guys and tell them, freeze, police, hands up. And if they are 3 or less of them, you can just put them in jail. You take off your handcuffs and boom, they are not harmed at all. You can also use a teaser, which is also a slightly better option for you than just shooting them. And that's what I really enjoyed here. And I think this really appeals to many of the people, and that was really well made 2 first levels of the game. But after these 2 first levels, the things are getting sort of out of hand for the developers, because you can clearly see that these first 2 levels are very well tied and they really play together with the whole gameplay decisions about this being cop and not being a murderous psychopath that kills everything that moves. The thing is, when you finish these 2 levels, it seems that they wanted to keep the story more and more aggressive. You know, you start with an earthquake and then the tension has to go up. And that's what they didn't pull off. That's the thing that really ruins the game, because on the cutscenes your character, the Mendoza, is a really good cop that wants to be with high morals and doesn't get bribed and stuff like that. But later in the game, even if you're careful, even if you want to work as a cop would, then you can't. You can't, because then at some point in every level, even if you were careful enough not to kill anyone and just to stun them with your taser or put them into jail, there's a moment in the level that the whole breaks out free, and you shoot every single of your opponents, and that's really crashing all the narrative that you have in this game, and it doesn't play really well with the story that the game is trying to tell you. And that's where you come to the worst part of the game, and it's not really the design itself, because you can see that the designers were trying really hard to pull it off, but they were doing it with one hand behind their backs. And when I say it, I mean that they were doing it as a Battlefield spin-off. They shouldn't have. If the game was just called Hardline, they would be completely off the hook of the Battlefield. They wouldn't have to bother with all of this, because this Battlefield in the name means that the multiplayer mode, which is essential for every Battlefield game ever released, I think, the multiplayer mode is suffering from this. They had to drop all the fancy stuff in the multiplayer maps, so there's no heavy helicopters, there's no real tanks, there's only light tanks that some SWAT teams use or something like this. And that is really, really bad for me, because you lose a lot of these things that make Battlefield a Battlefield. The things that for which I, for example, love Battlefield 4, and why I'm waiting quite hard for the Battlefield 1. And in Battlefield Hardline they had to drop it because it didn't fit the setting of the cops versus robbers, and you can see that. And although some game modes have done a pretty well job to fit into this, they are still limited by this Battlefield name that you can see in the title. So what I think the best thing to do with this right now for the EA would be to make the sequel called just Hardline 2 with some subtitle or something like this. Drop the Battlefield part altogether, and this way you get a brand that's new, that's refreshing, because it can be very refreshing, as I can see from the things that were provided in the Hardline, Battlefield Hardline, and that would give them an opportunity to make some very impressive franchise for them, and that would be really great, because I don't really like to have always the same Call of Duty. You know, the hate for the Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, or whatever the hell the 2016 installment in the franchise is called. I think it's Infinite Warfare. It's boring. I played the Black Ops 3, I borrowed it from my brother, and it was ridiculously dull. I had no idea what was going on, because since the Modern Warfare, they were putting the stakes higher and higher and higher and higher, because you can have a game, the first one to be about saving the world from the nuclear war, and then have the second game in the franchise about something less terrifying, because it doesn't work this way. And because the Call of Duty franchise, with the Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, the Ghosts, the Black Ops 1, 2, 3, they were still keeping the stakes higher and higher, and that's why it didn't really work for the Infinite Warfare, as you can see with the reception on the internet. And once the EA drops the Battlefield in the Hardline, they will get a new franchise that is that it doesn't have to be about saving the world. It can be about infiltrating the drug dealers. It can be about working against the goddamn arms dealers, or I don't know, the gambling industry that isn't legal everywhere. There's a lot of things that you can do in Hardline as a franchise that would be very interesting, but it is very limited by the things that are in the Battlefield series beforehand, and that's what you have to drop. And if the next Hardline drops it, I will be very, very glad of it. And I think that's all in the design, because all the design is pretty well, but it doesn't really pull off all the tricks it should, because of the Battlefield name that's hanging above it. And okay, there are some improvements. There are some improvements in multiplayer. For example, when there's a medic nearby, you can just walk up to him and get your med pack. You don't have to wait for the player to drop it, so you don't have to work with the annoying dumbasses that play the game and doesn't know that it's a team-based multiplayer. And also there's because of the whole team, the distraction that was Very important for Battlefield Bad Company, Bad Company 2, less important for Battlefield 3 and 4, but it was very important for the series since the Bad Company, and the distraction is very limited right now. And I must admit, the maps aren't very memorable in the multiplayer mode, and when I think of it, I stopped playing Battlefield Hardline like 2 weeks ago. I don't remember any of the multiplayer maps right now. I remember maps I was playing on Unreal Tournament over a decade ago, but I don't remember any of the Hardlines. So, to summarize it up, I would give the Hardline 6 points out of 10 for its design, because I can see that the designers did a pretty good job in doing what they could to make something fresh and being tied by the limitations of the franchise they were working with. And I think the 6 points is a fair score, and if they drop the Battlefield, as I said before, if they drop the Battlefield for the Hardline 2 or whatever it's going to be called, if they make it, I think they can do it a really good game out of it, and it would be fantastic to see. So the next part I want to talk about is the technical side of the game. It's obviously running the same but slightly upgraded engine that Battlefield 4 had. It was the Frostbite, I think, 3.0, or if I'm not mistaken. And in terms of the graphics, it looks exactly the same as Battlefield 4 on the PlayStation 4 when I tested it. And the frame rate is pretty solid. They are trying to reach the 60 frames per second cap, and most of the time they reach it. You can see the fluid motion all the time, either in single player or the multiplayer modes. But the most disappointing thing was that I saw the frame rate drops, and it wasn't in the multiplayer. When, you know, everything can happen. You can have 64 players blowing up stuff at the same time on your screen. But the frame drops that I did notice happened in the single player mode, and it wasn't even when I was playing, it was when I was watching the cutscenes, which is very strange for the game to have, because the cutscene is a cutscene. You can do exactly, it always does exactly what designers wanted to show. It doesn't have some unexpected explosions or a lot of objects to count the physics for, and that's what is very strange for me. Why doesn't it keep the 60 frames per second mark? But okay, it's just a cutscene, so it doesn't really bother me when because it doesn't occur when I'm playing, so I don't have this strange feeling when suddenly your frame rate drops from 60 to 30, which is awful. But okay, I can live with this. Then we have the netcode, which is extremely important for every multiplayer game, and this one is great. I mean, as I said, it's using the same technology that Battlefield 4 used, and Battlefield 4, when it first launched in the late 2013, I believe, it was a complete mess. I couldn't play this game. I didn't even bought it on release date. I bought it, I believe, 4 months after the release, and it was still unplayable. Only a half a year later, so almost a year after the release of the Battlefield 4, it was playable. And then it was being improved. And now you can see in the Battlefield Hardline that it paid off. The Battlefield 4 works like a charm right now. I still play it very often. And the Battlefield Hardline on the multiplayer side works very well as well. And that's what I expect to see with Battlefield 1. Okay, there might be some minor issues, especially that when a new game releases, a lot of players want to play. Okay, I understand that, but I believe that after first month or something like this, from the release of Battlefield 1, we will have a very stable game, and I will be very disappointed if they didn't deliver this. And okay, I finished with praising the technicalities. Now there are two things I wanted to mention, two very annoying things. First, a little less annoying. When you are playing single player mode, as I said, you can sneak. And to sneak, you have to be in crouching mode, to be a little lower to make less sound. And then, sometimes, completely randomly, the game turns off your sneak mode or whatever it's called. I have no fucking idea. And that's really bad for me, because when I was sneaking up behind the guy and suddenly I stand up and make noise and I have to repeat all the work I did, it's really frustrating. And okay, but maybe it was my gamepad, I have no idea. But the one glitch that I didn't like was that I had a few times a situation when the scripts didn't work and I had to restart the game from the last checkpoint, play it again for a few minutes that I had already accomplished, and then wait for the scripts to work. And that's something really terrible, so especially as I bought the game over a year after a release. I mean, this is a single player, you can fix it, don't leave it like this. And because of that, because of the solid frame rates, very good netcode and some glitches, I will give the Hardline 7 points out of 10 for its technical side. As always, the last part I want to talk about the game is its marketing side. The Battlefield Hardline isn't very different from all the modern AAA games that you get every year on the holiday season. Although the Hardline wasn't released on holiday season, but you know what I mean. So you get a basic game, that's $60, and then you get a season pass for all the DLC for another $60. And that is terrible scheme, because you're paying $120 for a game that is still in development for over a goddamn year. So I don't like it. But the Hardline right now is very cheap. I believe I saw the Hardline and Battlefield 4, the basic things, basic games for on sale on PlayStation for less than $10, I believe. I don't know, I have a different currency set on my console, so I'm not sure what's the price right now on in the dollars, but less than $40, than $10, pardon me, less than $10 for two games is a really good deal right now. And I must admit, I can see Battlefield 4 and Hardline on sales constantly. They are very cheap then, and it's really amazing how cheap the Hardline especially got after just over a year after a release, because remember, the Battlefield 4 is almost 3 years old right now. But let's put it aside, we are talking about Hardline here. So it's quite cheap right now, so it's pretty worth trying out. And also the very good move from EA, I think, was that recently they were giving away all the DLC packs. Okay, they didn't give away the Season Pass as it was. And the Season Pass for Battlefield works a little different, because apart from the DLCs you get some extra content, and that extra content is also being the first in queue for the server when you're trying to connect, so it's favoring the people that paid the full price for the Season Pass, and that's really annoying if you don't have it. And okay, the DLCs are free, but I have no idea what they brought to the table, because I saw nothing change, and the maps from the DLCs were as unmemorable as they are in the basic game. So my question is, what for would anyone buy those DLCs? And the another thing is, as I said, it's Battlefield. That is the biggest problem this game has, and I can bet you any money that the Battlefield title was added on some meeting with executives that have spreadsheets in front of them all the time, and drop-down lists, and all the tables, all the average sales, and all this stuff, and they are not thinking like a normal human being, and that's because they think about money, only money, and they don't see that sometimes things less obvious can bring you more money than things that are obvious, and that's why they opted for the Battlefield franchise to be kept up with the Hardline, and that was a mistake. If they just made a Hardline, as I said, the designers would have much more freedom, and then they would make a better game out of it. But no, they had to push the Battlefield with this, and that's what is the biggest sin they did. And that's why I think, even though that the game is very, very cheap these days, and the DLCs are also very, very cheap, so I will rate the marketing of Battlefield Hardline, even though it's very cheap, at 6 points out of 10. If it wasn't the Battlefield tag right now in front of the title, I would give it 8 or even 9, because it's so cheap. But with this, they have completely ruined the game, and they don't deserve any more than 6 points out of 10. And that brings us to the sum up of the game. Do I think is it worth it? At the current price, with all the DLCs that you can get, which you shouldn't, because they are bad and useless. So you can get a base game if you want to, because you can still play online, and there's no problem to find people to play in the main modes like the Conquest or whatever it was called in the Hardline. And with the total score of 19 points, it's a pretty good deal. You can get many hours of gameplay out of it if you're a little bored with the Battlefield 4 or any other online shooter that you're playing. You can give it a try. You just get cheaply on any of the sales, and you should be satisfied with it. Okay, and that's all I have to tell you about the Battlefield Hardline. The total score, as I said, is 19 out of 30, and I think it's worth a try if you get it really, really cheap. But stay, because I want to talk about one more thing. I've been a little busy lately, as you could see, because I haven't updated anything on my channel except for small plays since, I believe, 3 months right now, since the Fault 4 review. I was pretty busy, and I will be pretty busy for next year or 2, so unfortunately I won't be able to upload as many reviews as I did in the beginning of the channel, but I will. And also there's one more thing I wanted to change. You could see all those little clips from the games with glitches, or when I wrecked 12 opponents in Battlefield 4 with a tank that I uploaded on this channel. That's not going to happen anymore. I will upload those clips to my personal YouTube channel. That's just Cubus as my nickname. And I will also put the link in the description below, and maybe if I get around how to do it, I will also put the link on the video screen. So that's what is changing. And this channel from now on will be only for the content that needs more work from me. So, for example, the reviews, maybe some, let's call it journalism or opinions on what's going on in the game industry. And I think that would be a good separation for these two things. So if you like this review, if you like what I do, please click subscribe, please click like button. It helps me a lot with my confidence about this. And please leave a comment if you have anything to say. Today I was recording this a little bit different than I used to before. You might hear the difference with more fluid speaking, and please give me thumbs up or whatever. Let me know how it worked out. Okay? I would be really grateful, and thanks for watching, and thanks for staying so long. Have a good day, I think.